Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regular board meeting for Wednesday, February 26, 2020. Just a tardiness on our start time. Apologies for that. We've had a very busy day already. And I'll turn it over before we ask for approval of the agenda to our corporate officer for some changes. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll be deleting items B12, B13, and B14 as the conditions for approval have not yet been met. And barring any unforeseen circumstances, we anticipate they'll be back on March 11th.
Thank you very much. Is there any other changes to the agenda? No other changes? Then I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Acton. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Before we get into the agenda, I would like to recognize that this meeting is taking place on the unceded traditional territories of Coast Salish people. And on to the next item, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item M1 is the adoption of the regular board meeting minutes of February 12th, 2020.
Do I have a mover? Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. Any further discussion on those? Errors, omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Public input period will be the next item.
Public input period. If anyone would like to give input on items on the agenda, please come forward to the microphone. It's not a public hearing, so I won't ask 3 times. Nobody coming forward, we'll move on. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegations, item D1 is Judy Stafford, Executive Director, Cowichan Green Community, with a year in review presentation for information.
Hi, Judy.
Hi.
How are you?
Great.
Great.
We're here to bring some love and light and sunshine to you guys.
Are these some of your friends?
These are some of my friends.
Awesome. Hi, guys.
We let Clive sit with us. we said to him, you might want to leave, but.
No, he loves the energy. He's always bringing it.
So yeah, we do have some staff members. Some of them do have to leave. They've got some work to do, and I'm not sure who's manning the office, but I'm sure there's somebody there. So thank you. This is our annual year in review video presentation. So we're really happy to be here. I was going to make a joke about Brian. He's not even here now.
He'll be here in a minute. Save it for the end.
Because he had said to me, wow, we haven't seen you in a long time, Judy. So I'm sure he misses me. So, but then he's not here, so maybe not so much. Okay, so we're going to show our video, and then I'm certainly open to answer any questions after.
I'm Christine Thomas. I'm the community health representative at Halitan Health Society. Our dietitian, Carrie Ray, originally introduced me to Couch and Green and this amazing program that they had, and said that they could bring produce here at no cost to community members. Since then, we have about a dozen community members on average that continually come in. They know the exact time, they show up. I always post on the websites, and even then some of them come in before I've even posted. They just know that Monday's the day that they can come and get some fresh produce. They just love it. It supports our community, and this time of the year can be hard for many families. It's getting ready for the holidays. There's added costs going out, especially with communities that are involved in culture. Culture can be expensive, so if you're part of Big House, and that's where a lot of your money is going this time of the year. So this food helps support our members at home, and yeah, they love it. Right down from little ones know, so they come in and with mom and dad, and they get to pick some fresh produce, which is awesome.
It's kind of nice being able to get fresh fruit and produce and vegetables. This program's nice in regards to actually help with healthier eating.
Sometimes we get food that we don't eat or don't like, whereas this one we know we're going to eat it and we're going to use it.
Thank you so much. This is like helping me out so much with my food bill. Because I'm on a disability.
And do you like the fact that you can help yourself to whatever you
Yes,
Yes,
to what I need. Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of foods that I can't eat because of the sugar amount.
Right.
Because I'm diabetic. So I have to be careful on what I choose and what I'm going to eat.
This, I'm able to get some things that I maybe wouldn't been able to get this week, and it's awesome. And I can get it myself, and I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm Sandy McPherson, and I've been volunteering at CGC since about 2010. CGC is very much about people and caring for the earth and caring for the fact that people need nutritious food in their lives, and that's a big part of a passion for me. The Refresh Marketplace is a store where the recovered food finds a new home and food for families who really need nutritious food in their lives. What I've seen is people coming in who really could benefit for themselves and for their families of having healthy, nutritious food in their lives.
Beauty of doing all that stuff you do is that we reap rewards. There's rewards for the things that are when we work hard. Is that right, Bryce?
What?
When you work hard in the garden, what happens?
Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah.
The plants they'll grow. That's right. And then when they grow, they do what?
What?
They ripen, and then Bryson and I and all these wonderful people help us harvest. We pick all the beans. What else did you pick? What else did you grow?
What?
Did you grow tomatoes? Yes. Did you take them home? What else did you grow? Arugula?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
mustard?
Mustard?
Kale?
Yeah.
Yellow beans?
Yeah.
Were they good beans, Bryson?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. we haven't been able to successfully participate in those activities as long as we have with this. There's such a variety of activity within this activity. You know, it's not just watering plants. It's planting, learning about the plants, watching them grow, seeing the difference in the plant, and in a sense, it's also seeing a difference in the growth of my good friend here. So for those reasons, yeah, absolutely, very, very valuable.
Sure you saw the 2 cameos by our mayors in that. So we're going to have dunk tank again this year, June 20th, if anyone else wants to line up. All
Well, you
right.
have your
Okay,
first
we got you.
volunteer.
Got it? Write that down? All right.
June 20th.
And this is recorded too, so we've got you on film.
So I do have a couple speakers on my list. Did you have anything else before I go to the
Just
directors?
to thank you again for the van. We put over 30,000 kilometers on it since you very kindly supported that. And it's definitely made a significant difference. I don't think we could have done this project without you. And up until now, we're, I would say, close to or over 200,000 pounds of food that we've reclaimed and redistributed in this community.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm just going to wait for the director who's first on the list to adjust his sweater. Director Wilson.
Getting a bit warm in
Oh,
here.
it's getting hot.
Careful. Well, first of all, I don't have the kind of vocabulary that can thank you guys enough for what you do. So basically, you're just going to have to put up with the thank you. And 2 things. First of all, is there a link for accessing that video that I can post up on the local Facebooks?
Yes, absolutely. We just put it on YouTube yesterday.
Okay.
And so it'll be on our Facebook, but we can send it around too.
If you could, that would be great.
Sure.
And I'll post it.
Yeah,
up
I
as
can
well.
email
So,
that to
yeah,
Shannon.
I'd like to
Okay.
share that. And the other question is, do we give you enough and how much do you need?
Oh, do you know me very well?
No.
You guys didn't warn him before you saw that we were on the delegation. I think I said to Ian, we're not going to ask you for anything today. I did say that. But we'll be back. We can always use more money, all the time, 100%.
I'll send you Director Wilson's home address
Oh,
after
okay, yeah.
the meeting.
Actually, I live in Caldwell Hill. I know where he lives.
Good. Thank you. Anything else, Director Wilson?
Nope,
Thank
that
you,
was enough.
Director Yanni
Okay, we
DiNardo.
made note of that too. We got someone in the dunk tank and we've got some money coming. Okay, good.
Awesome.
So from me, you're gonna,
Whoa.
Sorry, just one moment. I think one of our...
oh, thank you.
Klaus is so excited.
Yeah, I know, he can't contain himself.
He's already watching it again.
Right? That's what I thought. That was definitely the. He heard you were giving us money and he almost had a heart attack over there.
You know him well.
I know him very well. I razzed him enough last year when I was here. It's okay. Oh, here we go again.
I'm going to wait till Director Kuhn is finished with his disruption. Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Judy. I just wanted to let you know that I was speaking to one of your longtime funders a while back, and they said they can't believe you used to tell them, we're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing that, and he was saying he'd sit back and go, oh, yeah, and he said, sure enough, here we are, and it was all done. So good on ya.
Thanks very much.
It's a tough job.
Obviously, the team is 90% of it.
Yes.
I'm good at getting the money. They're the ones that have to
Okay,
do all the
yeah.
work. Every time I get a grant, they go, oh, God.
Yeah, great job. Bye.
Anyone else from the floor I just have to say, we spent a lot of time on a lot of things that maybe that didn't work out over the years, but every time you come here, I see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new ones, so it's great to see that your base is solid, you've got a great foundation there, but you're able to continue to attract new people, and I know as, you know, any of us who have volunteered over the years, we come and go. And somehow you've managed to have people that are dedicated for the long term and attract new people on their journey as volunteers or through their lives. And, you know, it's funny because I know these are really happy, celebratory movies, but they're also very emotional and they really grab people. So good job on you for continuing to pull at our heartstrings, but also provide us the facts that allow us to continue to support you, whether it's through advocacy or volunteering time or Mike's money when he pulls his checkbook out. But I just want to thank you for all the work, and I know we will see you again, and thank you so much. Oh, now I was about to move on, but now the other directors have found something. So Director Toporowski and I believe Director Staples, she wants to remark on her dunk tank experience. Director Toporowski.
Thank you. I just wanted to share that there are a lot of personal ways to donate, and she has lots of options for you, Mike. And I wrote a check out for $100, so I challenge you to match it or do greater. There you go.
Yes.
Okay, not back and forth here, folks. Director Staples.
No. I just wanted to say, I was just thinking, watching the video of when, I don't even remember what years it was in the late 90s sometime. Couch and Green Community started with Tom, I can't even remember his last name.
Merrick.
I worked for them then, and we were in the building, the Green Door building downtown, the shed in the back.
It wasn't even the
There
green
was
building, it was the
6 of us.
shed.
It wasn't the green building, it was the shed in the back that 6 of us were in. And there's no way at that time that he could have possibly envisioned what you and the team at CGC have made this for our community, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. My mom was furious when I started here because I started on a 6-month contract and she thought that was ridiculous. You can't get a job for 6 months, and 13 years later, here we are. So thanks again for allowing us to come and hopefully brighten your day.
Thank you.
And hopefully
Thank
you don't
you.
end too late tonight. We can come back later if you need some more fun and games.
Sounds great.
Okay, thanks again,
I'll
everyone.
text you.
Okay.
Thank you all. And then Cliff's all alone again. You can move and sit beside Mr. Schumacher if you're feeling lonely, Cliff. All right. Moving on, Ms. Legault. Oh, report of the chairperson. I, throughout this week, had a lot of things to say, but I will say in advance of something that will be coming to our agenda. Many of you may have seen a release from the Cowichan Leadership Group this week on the opioid crisis and the homelessness and the many challenges we're facing, especially in the core of the region. And I just want to say, if you haven't yet, please read that information, read the accompanying letters that we've sent to the ministers. And I thank Director Staples and the Mayor of Duncan for continually looking at angles that we may be able to further exploit to provide the necessary funding and supports we need in the region. I think we all recognize that this provincial government has at least sent signals out that they're concerned about the opioid crisis in our province. However, I think we also all see that the resources that we need to actually make a change for the better are lacking. And as we continue to move forward, I think you're going to see more forceful actions and advocacy on behalf of this issue with all of the leaders in the region. So I think we'll be bringing something to this board for formal support at the next board meeting, but I just want to say that please take the time to read that information if you can in the interim, because for those that don't know, I think you can pick up anecdotally through the news reports in the last few months. The crisis is really, was a crisis before, has now reached just beyond critical proportions. And for all the work that great groups are doing in the community, whether it's CGC, all the other advocacy groups and support groups, we're falling further behind, and without support from the provincial government, we're not going to be able to really move beyond that. Beyond that discussion, on a low note, on a high note, I noticed there's all kinds of heritage activities through our region in the last week and a bit, and that's because it was Heritage Week. As Mayor of Ladysmith, I was fortunate enough, my back will tell you otherwise, but to man a booth at the Heritage festivities on the weekend in Ladysmith. And I noticed in various social media and news posts about other activities throughout the region. And one of the things that we can definitely be proud of in our region, of many, to be honest, is the embrace of heritage, whether it's Shawnigan Lake and their plans and how even their work ties in with the Think Shawnigan project, to our work on our Arts and Heritage Hub in Ladysmith. Doesn't mean these relationships are always easy, but you know, every corner of our region there's support for heritage, and it really captures and protects the character and the essence of our communities, because I think that foundation of forestry and stuff has been what we've been built on, and as we move forward, heritage, our lessons from the past definitely inform how we better manage our resources and our communities for the future. So I don't have anything else, unfortunately, on my list, but so we'll move on with the agenda. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No correspondence or information items, so committee and commissioner reports. Item CR1 is the report and recommendations of the Corporate Services Committee meeting of February 12th, 2020.
Thank you. And just a quick item, Director Morrison wants to pull number 6 and number 3, Director Acton, so 6. The chiller replacement? No. Oh, okay, sorry. No. No, the chiller replacement is number 3. Are you thinking about EAS, maybe? No? Oh, number 3, 6, 3. Oh, there's some numbering issues here. Okay.
Number 2. Number 3 of number 2, 2.3. I think it's 2.3.
Yeah, they now we're seeing we have some clerical errors in our agenda. 6.
1.3.
Oh, okay, I got it.
That's what it is.
It is item 3.
No, no,
Yes, it is. Item 1 has got 6 subparts to it, then that's item 3.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, so we pulled 3 and 6. The first item is 6 parts. All right, so back to the chair of the committee.
Are we clear on direction,
Sure.
Mr. Chair?
We're voting on all but the bottom number
So pull
3
number
and bottom
3,
number 6.
proper, 3 proper, and 6.
We will at the time, yeah.
Okay, I'll move the Corporate Services Committee report of February 13th. It reports and recommends, 1 has 6 parts, that short-term borrowing of up to $760,000 be approved for the purchase of land under Function 232, Community Parks Area B, to be paid back over 5 years, as per the liabilities under Agreement Section 175 of the Community Charter. 2 of 6, that short-term borrowing of up to $413,483 be approved for parking lot upgrades under Function 411, Kerry Park Recreational Center, to be paid back over 5 years as per the liabilities under Agreement Section 175 of the Community Charter. That short-term borrowing of up to $415,000 be approved for chiller replacement under Function 423, Cowichan Community Center Arena, be paid back over 5 years as per the liabilities under Agreement Section 175 of the Community Charter. That short-term borrowing of up to $85,000 be approved for guardrail replacement at Binks Creek under Function 520, Solid Waste Management Complex, to be paid back over 5 years as per liabilities under Agreement Section 175 of the Community Charter. That short-term borrowing of up to $100,000 be approved for the purchase of a skidster under Function 520, Solid Waste Management Complex, to be paid back over 5 years as per the liabilities under Agreement Section 175 of the Community Charter. That short-term borrowing of up to $13,000 be approved for well rehabilitation under Function 613, Dogwood Ridge Water System, to be paid back over 5 years as per the liabilities under Agreement Section 175 of the Community Charter. And number 2, that organizations receiving annual grant funding from the Cowichan Valley Regional District be advised that where possible, payments will be altered to coincide with receipt of tax revenue from the province. Number 3 is pulled. Number 4, that the revised operating reserve fund policy be approved. Number 5, that the 2020 budget for Function 100, General Government, be amended to 1, increase transfer from operating reserve by $32,000, and 2, increase IT infrastructure by $32,000. And number 6 is pulled as well.
Thank you. That's been moved by Director McGonigal, seconded by Director Kuhn. Any discussion on those items? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Director Acton, so you wanted to pull number 3? Which is the credit card policy? Yes. Okay. So would you like to address it?
Yes, thank you. So I just, if any of my statements are untrue, perhaps finance could correct me, because I'm, this is not sitting well for me as far as my ethics are looking at it. So it's a credit card policy that waives credit card fee processed at the Cowichan Community Center for the Junior B hockey team that is owned by an international investor. So we have, it's, no? Okay. So maybe clarify that, please.
Yeah, I thought this was addressed at the previous meeting, but through to staff.
Through the chair to Director Acton, this is not for credit card fees. This is setting limitations of how much we will accept via credit card. So this does not exempt from the fee. What this policy does say that yes, they can charge over $5,000, but does not exempt any fees.
Yes, but so it excludes our taxpayers from using it as a payment form, but not an international investor.
In this case, yes.
Microphone.
Microphone.
Any costs to do that exception is paid for by our taxpayers.
No.
That we are, yeah.
No, I think, sorry, and I maybe just ask the question. On those transactions of 5,000, would the credit card processing fees be paid? Sorry, I think that's what you're saying, isn't it? Like, that our taxpayers essentially, if they make a $5,000 payment with a credit card, we get ding credit card fees. And essentially, that's a subsidy from our taxpayers, I believe is what.
Yeah. Through the chair to Director Acton, with regards to the capitals, their fee is incorporated into their, what they already pay. The rec centers already factor in a charge.
Oh, okay. So there's essentially a surcharge that's paid when they pay by credit card. Okay. So that means.
Thank you.
Thank you. Glad we cleared that up.
So we can move number 3, that the
Thank you,
credit
Director
card
McGonigal.
policy be approved?
Yes, I believe so. Seconded
So
by
moved.
Director Acton. That's an endorsement. Whew. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. And I'm going to turn to Director Morrison for number 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a substitute resolution. This is on the basis of discussions with our corporate officer, CAO chair, and committee chairs. And it reads 6.1, that it be recommended that corporate services establish a finance and audit subcommittee. And number 2, that the following directors be appointed, and it's the same as listed there: Morrison, Nicholson, Salmon, Sebring, Smith, Staples.
Sorry, can you finish before you? Yep.
Stone and Wilson.
Thank you.
And I would move that.
Okay. Is that a seconder or just a question? Okay, we take that as a friendly amendment. And Director Kuhn. And that's been moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Kuhn. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed? It wouldn't be the same without you, Director Kuhn. I could say that with absolute certainty.
That's a compliment.
I was going to say that's absolutely a compliment. I was surprised when you weren't there. I thought for sure it was an oversight.
Yeah, I didn't understand myself.
All right, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item CR2 is report and recommendations of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of February 19th, 2020.
Would you like to top up your water before you begin?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a long list, and normally I would read the report out verbatim, but it was all read out verbatim at committee, so I will abbreviate where appropriate. Items 1 through 14 are for all directors. And here we go. Item 1, grant and aid electoral area E to the Cowichan Estuary Center Society for education youth on water conservation, repair and restoration. 2, grant and aid electoral area C in the amount of $500 to Mill Bay and District Conservation Society for coho salmon enhancement, Shawnigan Creek. Number 3, grant and aid electoral area C, $200 to Young Seniors Action Group. I love their acronym. Replacement of chairs for the activity room. 4, grant and aid electoral area C, Cobble Hill, $500 to the Cobble Hill Event Society, Music in the Park 2020. 5, grant and aid electoral area C in the amount of $1,000 to the Cobble Hill Farmers Institute and Agricultural Society for work on the 4-H poultry barn. 6, grant and aid electoral area B, Shawnigan Lake, $6,500 to the Shawnigan Research Group to assist in bridge water sampling and the likes. 7, the bylaw 4314, garbage and or recyclable material collection amendment bylaw be considered for 3 readings and adoption. 8, the 2020 budget for function 557, area A, critical street lighting. 1, be increased the requisition by $607, and 2, decrease surplus deficit by $607. 9, and there's 7 items that these following bylaws be considered for 3 readings and adoption. CVRD bylaw 4306 Satellite Park Water System, 4307 Douglas Hill Water System, 4308 Fern Ridge Water System, 4309 Dogwood Ridge Water System, 4310 Arbutus Ridge Water System, 4311 Cherry Point Water System, and 4312 Shawnigan Lake North Water System. 10, and this is one of my favorite lines, that the certificate of sufficiency confirming that a sufficient petition requesting inclusion Cary Village Water System area be received. Number 2, the bylaw 2491, Cary Village Water System Establishment bylaw be amended to include the property identifier number listed there. A lot, I don't have to go through all those. 3, the amendment bylaws be forwarded to the board for consideration of 3 readings and upon finalization and execution of the servicing agreement, consideration for adoption. 11, the following bylaws be considered for 3 readings and adoption. Bylaw 4303 Cowichan Bay Sewer System, 4304 Sentinel Ridge Sewer System, and 4305 Eagle Heights Sewer System. 12, 1, that 2020 budget for function 820 Eagle Heights be amended to A, increase transfer force main capital reserve funding by $75,000, B, increase capital engineering structures by $75,000. 2, that these expenditures be approved prior to adoption of the bylaw. 13, the MOTI be requested to permit or to cancel permit to construct number BU 848/90 as the CVRD no longer requires the permit to develop public access on Hollings Road right away. 14, that budget 2020 budget for function 231 electoral area parks be amended to increase transfer from capital reserve by $25,000 and increase land improvements by $25,000. I move those items.
Seconded by Director Smith. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
Items 15 through 21, electoral area directors only. And did we pull some of these? No, those are just under bylaws. 15, restrictive covenant number CA 45225545 on PID 005490-383 be discharged. 16, development permit number DVP20E01 to vary the section of the electoral area e-zoning bylaw to increase the maximum size of the accessory building as noted there and to increase the maximum height as noted there be approved. 17, temporary use permit number TUP19D01 be issued. 18, covenant number CA2922600 be discharged. 19.1, the development permit application DP19C07 be issued. And 2, the requirement for 10% lot frontage for lots B and C be, for the PID noted there, be waived. 20, development variance permit number DVP19D02 to vary the zoning bylaw for minimum setback for agricultural buildings and structures from the parcel line as noted there be issued. 21.1, that OCP and zoning amendment bylaws for application number RZ18I01 be forwarded to the board for consideration of first and second readings. And 2, that a public hearing be scheduled with directors from electoral areas I, F, and E as delegates. I move those items.
Seconded by Director Smith. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
Concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to staff reports. Item SR1 is a staff report and PowerPoint presentation from the Manager of Communications Engagement and Kim Scott, Associate VP, Ledger Research, regarding the 2019 Community Satisfaction Survey results.
Welcome, Mr. Schumacher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, fellow directors. Thanks for having us. Briefly want to say that with respect, I know there's a lot of business to take on today, so our intent is not to go through the survey results line by line. We're going to go through some of the highlights and key findings. We have Kim Scott here, who's Associate Vice President with Leger, formerly Energy Research. She's been doing market research as a career for the past 15 years, and although originally hailing from Alberta, has lived in Vancouver since then. We won't hold that against her. So Kim will actually be briefly delivering the summary presentation. Hopefully you've all had a chance to review the summary report that was attached to your agendas. And we'll ask to hold questions to the end just to move through the presentation, and we can address any questions towards the end.
Excellent. Thank you.
From present slide, why am I having a hard time?
Play from beginning will also work.
There we go.
Welcome.
Thank you. All right. I apologize. I've got some rattly papers here because I'm old school and have notes on them.
Just maybe pull the microphone down just so that you're, because of the broadcasting. Thank you.
Much shorter than Mr. Schumacher. So,
welcome, Ms. Scott.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm delighted to be here. So as Chris mentioned, this is meant to be kind of key highlights of the research that we did in the fall of 2019. So we'll start off with a little bit about objectives and then a little bit about the methodology as well. So overall, we had 2 goals in conducting this research. The first was to get a sense of where we are now, so awareness, use, and satisfaction with current services. And then the second was where we want to go. So getting feedback about potential future directions that we might want to take. Specific objectives that were included in the survey, identifying the most important local issues, gauging satisfaction with the quality of life and services provided by the CVRD, understanding use and satisfaction of parks and trails, understanding the use and satisfaction with public transit, gauging communication and engagement preferences, support for potential future directions. And then we had some bonus objectives that are under separate cover, where we also included a separate section about healthcare, so sources of information, experiences with emergency healthcare, and perceived benefits of replacing the hospital. So here's where it gets fun. We had 3 different versions of the survey that were fielded. One of them was a scientific study, one of them was a consultative study, and then we had that healthcare module as well. Today we're going to be talking about the scientific study. So that's the one that's projectable to the general population. That one was conducted by telephone using, I've got RDD here, that stands for random digit dial. So that means that every household had a random chance of being selected to participate in the study. We also used cell phone numbers to supplement landlines to make sure that it was nice and representative. And when we reached people by phone, we gave them the option of completing the survey by phone with us, either then or at a later date, or to get a link to the survey by email. We set quotas to match the actual demographics of the area by age, gender, and region. It was conducted between November 20th and December 19th of last year. And in all, we received 669 completions to the survey, so 408 by phone and the rest of them online. The only criteria were that they had to live in the area, obviously, that was a given, and employees and members of their households were not eligible to participate. When it comes to the consultation study, that one's considered to be non-scientific. It's for the purposes of engagement. It's to really make sure that everybody who wants to have a say has the opportunity to share their opinion. That one was available online through an open link, which was posted on the CVRD website, as well as in local media and on social media. And then the healthcare module was a opt-in for either one of those surveys, where people could choose to complete that online if they had the time and the inclination. Okay. So getting into the results, some key highlights to share with you. So this is our kind of top of house metric here. How would you rate the overall quality of life in your local area today? In all, 94% of people rated their quality of life in the CVRD as either good or very good. And that puts you in good company with other municipalities around BC. Looking at a study of about 40 municipalities that we've completed recently, the average is about 95, so it puts you right in that same wheelhouse. We asked, in your opinion, what is the single most important issue facing the Cowichan Valley? That is the one that should receive the greatest attention from your local leaders. You can see right at the top of the chart here, the number one issue that people named was homelessness. And I know that that's a topic of much conversation these days. I do note that the two that came up the most commonly back in 2016 when we did the survey, which are cost of living and drinking water, both of those have gone down quite significantly since then, which I think is testament to the action that the council or that the board has taken since then. Okay. So looking at satisfaction with various services provided by the CVRD, you can see right up at the top, Parks and Trails gets really great ratings, so congratulations to Parks and Trails, with 75% of people this year saying that they're satisfied with Parks and Trails. That's followed by garbage and recycling drop-off depots, recreation facilities and programming, and arts and culture, all of which get really positive ratings. What I've been considering the necessary evils or the nuts and bolts of running a municipality, those kinds of things get lower satisfaction rates, not necessarily because people are less satisfied, but because people are less moved by them, per se. We also ask people, after they've rated those services, to select which one of them is the most important to them. And overwhelmingly, Parks and Trails and land use planning and development services are the most important to folks. Okay. We asked also about curbside recycling. So we asked whether their household did receive curbside recycling, and 90% of folks said yes, that they did. Among those people, satisfaction's quite strong at 82%, which is up from 2016. Similarly, we asked about curbside garbage collection, and about 52% of the people that we talked to said that they did use garbage collection services from the CVRD. And of those, again, satisfaction was quite strong at 83%, which is up slightly, but not significantly from 2016. Okay, so we'll change gears to talk about Parks and Trails. That was the next big section and the big objective that we wanted to meet. So first, we presented them with a long list of regional parks and trails and asked which of them they'd used within the past 6 months. The finding that I note is way down near the bottom here is none. only 25% of people said that they hadn't used any of these services within the past 6 months, which I find quite impressive. The most used were the Cowichan Valley Trail and the Kinsale Trestle. Generally speaking, among people who did use parks and trails within the last 6 months, they're fairly frequent users, with 40% of people using the parks and trails at least weekly, and another quarter using them monthly, if not weekly. And satisfaction, again, is quite high at 84% overall. All right. And then we asked people to prioritize. So we prefaced this one with the statement, the Cowichan Valley Regional District must make choices about how to prioritize spending. And with that in mind, how would you rate the following activities that they could invest in to enhance your enjoyment of regional parks and trails? So with that framing, the top two really stand out to me. It's protect species in the natural environment and repair and maintain existing facilities. So there's a big drop off after those two, and the rest of the items are still considered to be quite high priorities, but not nearly at the same level. We also asked about support for the Regional Parkland Acquisition Fund. So I know that that was approved some time ago, back in 2008. And we wanted to get a sense of how supportive people were of continuing this fund. And overall, more than half of people said that they were supportive, and that's giving a rating of 4 or 5 out of 5. All right, switching gears again, the next objective was about transit services. So whereas we found that parks and trails were very well used, we found that public transit was not very well used. When we asked which of the following transit services they took, 82% of people said that they hadn't used any of them within the past 6 months. Among those few who did use transit services, the services were all fairly well rated, but I do note the important caveat that these are on a very small base size and are directional only. We did find that among those people who do use transit, commuting to work is the most common trip purpose, followed by things like personal business, shopping, and social and entertainment reasons. Among those people who haven't used transit within the past 6 months, we asked why not. I think there are kind of 3 themes that net out in this. One of them is just, but I have a car. That's easy. It's just habit to drive your car. That's convenient. It's easy. We would go with that. The second theme is about service limitations. So, perhaps there's no stop nearby, or it doesn't suit your schedule, or the service is too infrequent, that kind of thing. And the third is just simply not really having a need for transit services, so working from home or not going out much or that kind of thing. We also asked about interest in a transit service to Nanaimo. So with the framing that there's potentially talks about having a transit service that goes to key destinations in Nanaimo, how likely would you be to continue or to consider using transit? Realistically, the support for this kind of service is fairly limited. About 20% of people gave a rating of 4 or 5, saying that they would be likely to consider using, whereas 52% of people said that they were not at all likely. So what we can tell from this is that there's not really broad appeal for this kind of service. And then we did ask if such a service was implemented, what kind of destinations would you travel to using this kind of service? And the most common by far is the BC Ferries Terminal, followed by the Nanaimo Airport. So we can say even if people were interested in using this one, which is we know to be tepid, the destinations that people would be taking to aren't regular commuting. It's not for work or school, or at least among the broader population. It's for ferries and airport service. Okay, and the last objective that we're going to talk about today is about communications. So the first thing that we asked about communications is for them to rate the CVRD on each of the following. So informing you of important information and decisions, consulting you about topics and decisions, and responding to your feedback about topics and decisions. And I would say, with respect to Chris, it's a mixed bag here. Some people are very, very happy with communications, some people are not. Most people end up kind of in the middle. When it comes to topics where the CVRD is perceived to communicate well, communications about household services are related better than any other topic. Here's where it gets tricky. There isn't much clear direction for how to encourage people to engage with the CVRD in the future. So we asked, what could the CVRD do to encourage you to engage with them going forward? And there's not really anything that really broke through. The highest percentage that we got for any one suggestion was 5%, which is just keep me better informed or send me email or that kind of thing. But there isn't really like a key action that you can take out of this, unfortunately. We do know that people are going online to find information about the CVRD. That's where they expect to find it. 61% of people told us that they were going straight to your website. And another third said that they're going basically to Google to find out information. So when you do share information, that's the place to go, is to make sure that that's online, because that's where people want it. And same thing, we ask, what's your preferred method to get information from the regional district? And email is by far the number one priority there, with direct mail being the second preference. And same thing when it comes to giving residents the opportunity to share feedback with you. Email, again, is number one, and very distantly trailed by things like public meetings and public events. That's it. So I'll ask Chris to join me back up here to help field any questions.
Thank you. I'll start Director Smith and then Director Justice.
I found through the chair, I found the feedback really interesting because it was done in 2016, which was only 3 years ago. And having up-to-date data really makes a difference. I'm hoping when we do regional recreation, we'll have more do the same thing. But I know I had to
Not
go back
related to the subject matter,
but I just had to put it out there. One of the things that I did notice was there was no information for the people to know the difference between a regional park and a community park. So in electoral areas, we have quite a few community parks. So people, when they did the parks area, it wasn't enough information for them to actually know in their head. I mean, we have Cowichan Valley Trail butted against Stocking Creek Trail in Area G, and so people don't know the difference, that one is funded and operated by the local taxpayers and the other one is regionally funded. So I think that when it came to the parks and trails information, that there wasn't enough detail for the people to actually make informed decisions in that area. Was there a reason that it wasn't clarified in the survey?
Through the chair to Director Smith, I believe that for starters, the length of the survey was always a primary consideration as we were designing it. We extended the total length of it in terms of minutes it took to complete it over the phone we almost doubled it from the previous version by going deeper into probing levels of dissatisfaction, adding some extended focus areas like parks, and from engaging with Brian Farquhar, the manager at Parks and Trails, in consultation with him, we determined that gauging regional park satisfaction was probably the most relevant way to go rather than distinguishing between community parks. I think if the results of the satisfaction with our parks were much different and they were at the bottom of the list, I might be more concerned about the results and trying to address that and go deeper to see was it really dissatisfaction with regional versus community, but I'm feeling pretty confident that overall people are pretty satisfied with our parks and trails, be it regional or community. Did you want to add anything to that?
Thank you. I have Director, did you have another
I
comment?
was going to say the only other clarification that I would give on that is the first question that we asked on the topic of parks and trails was to provide them with a list of the parks and trails that we were talking about, so hopefully that did give a little bit of clarification, if that helps. Just a tiny bit.
Thank you. Director Justice, then Director Yanni DiNardo, McGonigal, then Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I was just curious about whether you've done any sort of cross-tabular analysis of within this data set, which is obviously huge, but I mean, have you looked at any regional differences or differences between municipalities and electoral areas in terms of, say, interest in transit, use of transit, that sort of thing?
Through the chair to alternate director justice, I have actually been poring over the data tables. We have, in addition to the scientific survey, we have one for our open link survey as well. One of the things I was really interested to see was, would there be a difference between people who were randomly selected versus people who self-selected to answer the survey? And I think that would tell us a lot about the value and of the data that we get when we go out to engage with the community, whether it needs to be strictly controlled or whether we can trust what comes in. And surprisingly, across almost every area that I looked, it was very similar. We actually had a very high number of people self-select and opt in to complete the online one. I believe that it was about 419 people. So between the two, we have over 1,000 residents, assuming nobody got the call and also filled out the online one. But obviously, yes, looking at, so just for the scientific study, for example, looking at the data tables that have been provided by Kim and her team, it's actually really comprehensive in terms of how you can segment out the data and look at it between subsectors of the region, break it out by demographic, by income level, a whole number of areas that you can look at to see how people's opinions, satisfaction levels, and priorities differ, which I'll be happy to share with the group as well, so you can pour into it and get a sense. I think it's going to be something that's really valuable for both for the board and the staff to use to look at it in that way when we're making decisions over the next couple of years.
Thank you. Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to, I guess, Mr. Schumacher. I also had a resident, a well-informed resident, thinking that the regional park was community parks and she wanted more money into community parks. And I had to explain to her. So I don't know if it's a theme with anybody else's area, but that's what I got as well. So just to let you know, there seemed to be some confusion on the distinction. Thank you.
Thank you. Director McGonigal.
Thank you. A couple questions really popped out at me. Ones that we've had discussions around this table about was regional parkland, for instance. When it was originally 10 years ago brought in, it was highly anticipated and endorsed under referendum, and with only 54% of people currently very supportive or highly supportive, I think it reaffirms the need to look at it 10 years out and where we should go in the future, and perhaps more public engagement on the Regional Parkland Acquisition Fund, what it has accomplished from the original list that was brought forward on that, and where to go from here in the next decade, for instance. The other one that really surprised me was the increase in transit opportunities for Nanaimo, and the discussions that we've had at perhaps looking at that, and the lack of support within the survey group on usage of that, only for a couple of stops perhaps in the Nanaimo area of the ferry terminal and alternate transportation through airports. So that was very surprising to me, given some of the discussions that we've had at recent committee meetings. So I would hope that we take these into consideration in future discussions moving forward. Thank you very much for some very good data.
That's not supported by the board. They'll support our withdrawal from transit. I'll go to, I have Director Acton and then Staples.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm always kind of weary when I see surveys. To me, it's still a very small percentage that we were able to touch, and like kind of psychological surveys, they're directed, the questions that they're asking are kind of directed to, you already kind of know the answers, you're trying to prove what you already believe. So some of them felt that way and some had some good information. But then also, even just the communication part, I'm curious to the point where some of them said, a large group said we'd like email, and then the large group said they wanted letters. So then, you know, was that 20% seniors, for example? So, you know, taking it a little bit, you know, getting out a little bit more out of there, a little bit more juice to say, per se, would be interesting. And I just would be really cautious of, you know, how we take it further. I did one. So the one online. So I did it so that I could see what the questions were. And I could see that there would be a lot of confusion around the parks questions, the regional, and some of the other ones like the bus and and also I guess another question would be interesting to know is how informed are some of these people who are doing the survey? Do they understand what a regional district does when they answer them?
Well, I think, through the chair to Director Acton, I think we're going to have to throw the survey out knowing that you completed it.
Totally ruins all of our results.
No, the one online.
Oh, the open link, okay.
Yeah, the open one. No one
I
called me.
guess we're still okay. I think to try and attempt to respond to a lot of what you said, I think it's very difficult to design a survey that, like we had like a referendum question, that doesn't lead people to what you want them to hear, but that also, and doesn't try to explain everything in its entirety at the point of losing the participant. So we were certainly challenged in that way, and people who did complete it over the phone, want to thank them if any of them are tuning into this, because it's really valuable. But as you could see, a number of people opted to do the survey online, where I think you may have had the benefit of being able to jump onto our website and do a little bit of background digging while you were doing it, which may have helped you become better informed as you were going through it. But we certainly designed it with that in mind, and giving people the opportunity to be able to do it on their own time, and to have a little bit more time than to make a quick rush snap decision over the phone. That being said, the random dialing is the best way to, well, probably the only way to actually get somebody to be able to provide them with that secure link unique to them, so that they can be a part of the scientific study. So I think there's a lot of challenges in the methodology regardless of how you approach it, but I feel confident in the representative data set that we have collected out of this. It's obviously not perfect. One thing to note is the challenge around getting the younger demographic to participate in a survey, regardless of whether it's over the phone or online. So only 7% of respondents were between 18 and 35, but they're about 17% of our total population. However, that number was the same between the randomized scientific study and the self-select study. So I think, and as me and Kim were discussing earlier, that's always a challenge area for not just public sector opinion polling, but private sector marketing and right across the board. So it's, again, it's not quite perfect, but I think it's probably as good as we could hope to get.
Thank you, Director Staples.
So a couple of things, and you just touched on one, because I was going to ask you about the demographic surveyed versus the actual demographics in our region and representation around that. Because looking at the transportation specifically, I've been at a number of different things lately where in surprising places, transportation comes up as a #1 barrier. And in thinking of having not a younger demographic represented, or the socioeconomics of this demographic identified. I mean, I know it's identified, but I don't know that it's, again, completely reflective. And so I feel like some of the things like the transit may be skewed in the wrong direction, because that demographic isn't represented fully. So there's maybe 200 people that service is really important to them, for instance, that, you know, and only maybe 1% of them would be represented by this survey. So, and then also First Nations in this survey as well. And again, thinking of demographics around transportation that's a huge area as well that I feel is still missing in this. So I mean, the information is really important, and I'm not saying it's not valid in any way, shape, or form. I recognize that it is, but there's also big gaps in it. And so I don't want us to lose sight of that when we're making decisions around the table.
Thank you. Did you have a comment, concise one?
Yes. Mr. Chair, through you to Director Staples, I think that, yes, that while this is great data, I completely agree that it needs to be taken into context with the particular service or satisfaction area that we're looking at. Obviously, to participate in this survey, whether by phone, cell phone, or online, you would need access to, you know, one of those channels and mediums to actually be eligible to participate in it, or to have, you know, not a huge barrier to it. So with regards to transit, while I think this is we'll have some good data to help inform a conversation with regards to maybe connector service to Nanaimo or something like that. But in talking with my colleagues in transit, I think that though there is some other outreach that would need to be done to really talk to the people who may be most benefiting from it, as opposed to, you know, over 50% of our respondents, or close to 50% of them being retired people across the region. So 45%, yeah. I learned a lot about our demographics through this process.
So just to stay thematically on it, because my questions here were regards to what was the satisfaction level or the uptake of transit overall? What was that number again? It was a few slides back.
82% of people had not used transit.
So I just want to be clear, the people that had said they would use Nanaimo Ladysmith actually was higher than those who are presently using transit.
That would consider using.
Yes, so basically you're saying 18% of people, 82% have not current within our system. We're saying that they currently use transit, whether based on different frequencies, but 20% said that they would use that service. So just for clarity, or would possibly use that service. It's just very hard to you know, look at that in isolation when you're saying, oh, only 20% of people said they would possibly use a service where there was transit to Nanaimo. Because I'll tell you, in our community, that's the only transit they care about. And and BC Ferries and the airport, nobody has ever mentioned those as being a priority for them, right? It's VIU, it's shopping, and among the seniors groups in the north end of the district, it's access to services, because all their specialist appointment, even though we're in this health area, are directed to Nanaimo, not Cowichan or Victoria. So without any transit there, you know, of course I could get all the letters out, but, you know, to go to his diabetic specialist appointment costs him over $150 because he has to hire cabs, right, to get him around to his doctor, then his lab test, and then back to the doctor and home. So anyway, I just think it's important to point out that if you really want to look at something like transit, you need to do a survey based on transit only, and this is more of a general thing.
And if I can, Mr. Chair, Chris and I had a conversation about, you know, this paints a general picture, but you would want to dive deeper into the data sets to really start to examine, if you want to break it out by demographics, if you want to break it out by sub-regional use, to get some better answers around those kinds of questions. So I think the data as a whole is incredibly valuable. This just paints you an overarching picture, but I think there's a significant opportunity for us to drill down and use that data to answer some more specific questions that we want answered from this survey. This is not going to answer everything. We have to do more, and I think it also tells us areas where we need to maybe use some different engagement around getting to the root of some of these questions.
Thank you. Mr. Elzinga?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to bring to the committee's attention that the Transit Division is bringing a report forward March 11th to the Community Services Committee, specifically about the interregional transit to Nanaimo, and give an update and provide some recommendations at that time.
Thank you. Director Smith?
Thank you. One of the things that we're always working towards is active transportation, and the survey, I thought, covered the transit, but active transportation of having people being able to cycle to work and being more engaged in moving off to the grocery store with their bike or walking, and that type of transportation or using other than transit. You know, some of the different services that are coming out into British Columbia, you know, people might be more interested in that than the transit. There was no question in here, are you looking for an alternate type of way of transporting yourself? You know, this tells people that they don't, lots of people are not interested in riding the bus specifically, but they might be more interested in a service that is community involvement of picking up people, or whether it's a pay for service to transport. So we didn't really get that in this survey to reflect that area.
Through the chair to Director Smith, there was, so for within the overall satisfaction levels with our service groupings, one of the additions that we put into the survey was follow-up opportunity for verbatim comments. So if you answered that you were dissatisfied with Parks and Trails and Transit, for example, of that list, you would have been asked a follow-up question, up to a maximum of 2, to say you expressed you were dissatisfied with Transit. Can you make a suggestion for how to improve, what would improve your experience with that service? And so we have quite a bit of data in terms of verbatim comments that came out of that section. And so going through those, you may actually reveal people who are expressing a willingness to see more active transportation options in there. Whether I'm thinking that Parks and Trails and Transit would be the logical places people might have expressed those. But I'm not sure if there was that question made, but a fair comment is for possible inclusion in a future survey with the community.
Yeah, I would say that's an interesting idea for a more transportation-focused survey. That, you know, of course, these aren't free or cheap, especially the scientific ones. And just to comment around data stuff, because I hear these arguments all the time on validity of data, or you're looking for a specific result. These work, and your company specifically designs questions around a way to get scientifically valid results, and there is actually science behind data analysis and survey, and that's why this is called a scientific survey, because it meets that test in terms of accuracy, neutrality, and you know, naturally people will have a bias because this is where they live and they're asked about services that are provided, and as soon as you put the fact that these are tax services, it creates a certain bias. But it is important to say that needs to be a certain level of respect for the work, especially around the scientific studies, or else we shouldn't be doing them. So I really do appreciate the work, though, and not seeing anybody else on my speakers list. If I didn't miss anybody, I think we can move on to the next item. I would actually ask the board, we've been sitting for an hour and a half. It's been a long day. Is everybody okay with just a 10-minute break? Some of us didn't get a break between the last 2 meetings, so I got to, not a bio break as Director Morrison, but I'd like to get some coffee. Yes.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just add one more before we break, is the additional questions that were optional for respondents in any case of how they did the survey with regards to health services and information. That was added in working with our Cowichan Community Health Network. They were very interested in having some questions inserted in there if it was possible, and so I just think on behalf of that organization and Island Health, who they're going to be working with to take those results and design a more fulsome survey of their own, I think they're very appreciative of the fact that we were able to include those in there for them and use that data. So just wanted to express thanks to the board on their behalf.
Thank you, and thank you very much for your help. we're a couple folks short, but I believe we'll resume, and they'll join us shortly. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to item SR2 is a staff report from Legislative Services Division on alternate director remuneration during an extended leave.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, due to a perception of potential pecuniary interest, I'm going to excuse myself.
Thank you. We'll come get you. So we do have a recommendation. Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Mr. Chair, sorry. Uh-oh, it's getting late in the day, getting giggly here. I guess I have a question. Of course, I'd like to support this recommendation, and I would support it either way, whether the elected director is being compensated or not. And I would support maybe a time frame if we wanted to go that far, or what was the thinking behind the recommendation? What would be the consequence for the director? I haven't been able to pull that out.
Thank you. I'm not sure who on staff may be able to assist, but there's also a legislative framework from the province under the Local Government Act. And if a director is on leave granted by the board, they are still paid, and I believe that's actually in the Local Government Act. I don't think there's a provision for us to take away an elected director's pay if they are on a leave granted, but I would put that through to staff if they can clarify. Ms. Legault?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not a provision of the Local Government Act, but the CVRD bylaw outlines how a director will be compensated.
Okay. Thank you. So that's our policy. It's not an LGA provision, but that has been our policy. I have Director Morrison and then, follow up, and then Director Morrison and Director Sebring.
So my follow-up would be, do we need to include any kind of, actually, I'll just wait. I can't
Okay.
articulate.
No worries. Director Morrison?
I'd move the recommendation. If there's a second, I'd like to speak to it.
Seconded by Director McGonigal. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a very complex question that's being dealt with at UBCM. It was brought up at the forum. There's challenges around this, but I think the sense of fairness around the effort and energy required to perform this role as an alternate, and I think that given what we expect of the commitment of individuals to step in as an alternate director, just in reading this and contemplating the scenario of my own alternate and the challenge it would place on him to step in as a full-time director, this is more than reasonable, and I'm prepared to support this as it's presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Sebring?
Just a question for staff, and because I'm not up on the minutia of the payments here, are these payments to directors, EA directors and their alternates, and for that matter my alternates, do they come out of Function 100, or are they specific to each electoral area?
Through to staff?
In other words, I guess what I'm asking is this recommendation, if it's specific to each electoral
Who
area,
pays for it?
we're doubling,
Yeah.
right?
Through the chair to Director Sebring, there's a portion that comes out of the 100 budget, which is the same as the municipal director's amount that comes out of the 100 general government budget. And then 250 covers the additional amount of money that is covered for electoral area directors.
And that comes out of EA budget?
Function 250.
Yeah.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Director Nicholson?
Yeah, I guess I notionally support option 1, but it does beg the question of what the expectations would be around an alternate director's responsibilities versus what the regular director does. Yeah, because I know I do I know a lot of the directors do a lot more than just attend meetings at the CDRD.
Yeah, and if I can speak to that, I think that the experience that we've had a couple of times during my time at the board has been that the alternate director essentially assumes the role of the director, and the expectation seems to have been that the alternate director would assume the responsibilities of the regular director if given an extended period of absence. Our provisions now are that scheduled meetings that the alternate director, they are compensated on that, per meeting basis, 135.76. But what we've run into in a couple of instances is when there's an extended leave, either by election or absence, that the alternate director essentially assumed the role of the director in that interim period. And I guess maybe it needs to be said around the compensation that the expectation is that the alternate would assume all the responsibilities of the director in their absence, to kind of balance those two things out. And I would look to staff whether an amendment would be required to the motion, or if that would be included in our policy somehow.
I think with, Mr. Chair, without being specific, I think that would be the expectation. I mean, we could look at modifying some language to say that the expectation is that they're undertaking the full duties of a director. And so if you give us that direction, we can make that modification.
Thank you. So we do have it moved and seconded. I don't have anybody else on my speakers list, so I wonder if I can call the question, and then if there's a required motion after, I would entertain one. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Director Morrison, just wait 1 second, Mr. Carruthers. Just 1 second.
I was just going to move that, that staff develop policy to be presented to the board on the language around assuming full responsibilities of the director in this instance.
In the case of an extended absence?
Yep.
It's been seconded by Director Nicholson. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Let's give Director Haim, or alternate Director Haim, a moment to return to the meeting. And in the meantime, I'll turn to Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item SR3 is a staff report from the Environmental Services Division regarding Community Emergency Preparedness Fund grant application, and the recommendation for consideration is that a grant application in the amount of $81,104 be submitted to the Union of British Columbia Municipalities Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for the completion of updated flood mapping for the Cowichan and Cook Sila rivers.
Moved by Director McGonigal, seconded by Director Staples. Any discussion? Director Nicholson. I think Ms. Miller is coming to the podium.
Sorry, my question, my mic wasn't on.
Oh, okay.
My question is, why is it so difficult to get LiDAR done?
Ms. Miller.
We're asking ourselves the same question. The province we've provided substantial feedback to the province in partnership with many of the other local governments throughout the area, and particularly in the coastal zone, that the province wants us to do all of this mapping. They've put that down as a local government responsibility, yet they have not provided either funding for it or the key resources. And so we argued rather strenuously that they needed to undertake the foundational data acquisition of the LiDAR. And so they decided to do that. They applied for the same funding that we did a number of years ago. They've got NDMP funding. The LiDAR they acquired was for the entire coast of the province, including additional areas where local governments put additional money on the table, which we did for some of our areas that weren't in the coastal zone. The LiDAR has to be done to extremely stringent standards, new standards, federal standards in line with FEMA guidelines, which is kind of a new business model for some of these delivery companies. The LiDAR was supposed to have been delivered to us last spring. And then we were promised that it would be delivered in the fall and again midwinter, and now we're being told potentially sometime or end of March. And so we've kind of given up because we have a contractual obligation to deliver our product, even though their product to us is what's holding us up. I think the province has heard loud and clear. Certainly UBCM, who is hopefully going to be funding this extension of work, has heard loud and clear. But at the same time, the reality check is the province took on a substantial piece of work, and I think that they found that the delivery was substandard, and they're having to refly portions of it.
Thank you. I have Director Kuhn, I believe, then Staples. Did I see your hand? No. And then Director Sebring. So Director Kuhn.
Yes, I just want to mention to Kate, you've been very successful in the past in getting grant money for the CVRD. What do you think is the likelihood of us getting this money?
The model that we've used previously has been, I think, a really successful model of a partnership between communities, the province, and the federal government. That program is no longer operational, and the only program that is available to us is UBCM dollars with provincial funding. There has been, and I have to say that we were early adopters of the NDMP program. We were probably one of the most successful local governments in the country. That was 100% funding with no maximum. So it was about the business case and what you're able to bring forward. We now have a lot of smaller communities that are coming forward, and what UBCM has told us is they're seeing it's a maximum of 150 that you can ask for, and they're seeing roughly 4 times as many applications than they have an ability to actually support. So our ability to get this funding is obviously in competition. I think they've heard loud and clear that we're only asking because of their inability to provide what they were supposed to provide, so there's an onus on them. That doesn't fix the problem, but they don't have enough money. So we're saying maybe a 25% chance of getting this dollars.
Follow-up?
Is there a possibility that they'll provide part of the funding request, or do they just provide the whole thing or decline it?
This is an interesting one. I had been working with the province to put in a 2-part application. One was to complete this work, and the other was to begin to do floodplain mapping on the Chemainus River. And a few days before this grant was due, the application was due, they came back and said, we'll only accept an application for one watershed. We won't accept a regional application. So they're already feeling the pushback. What we did is we dropped the ask from 150 to what we actually needed, with a little bit of risk thrown in there. But so we've lowered it. We're hoping that helps sweeten the pot in terms of prioritizing us.
Thank you. Director Sebring.
I ask this every time we apply for a grant, because every time we apply for a grant, it increases the workload around here. What's this going to do to the workload? Does this end up, if we get the money down the line with a request for some more resources to spend this grant and do the work that needs to be done?
Through to Ms. Miller.
So we currently have the Cowichan flood management function that has a roughly 10% staff load on it. Part of the responsibility of that function is to maintain and keep up to date the flood mapping and modeling for the lower Cowichan area. So that's kind of the main purpose of the function. The function also allows us to work collaboratively with our partners, so that's North Cowichan, City of Duncan, Cowichan Tribes, as well as other provincial entities. Further, that function is also a watershed-based function, so there's expectations of the communities outside of the lower floodplain for some measure of service. And so the only way that we can actually meet the objectives that have been given to us, the task at hand, is fairly onerous. It does not have the requisite funding that it needs. So I think we've been extremely successful using the funding that we have to cover the staff load component of the program, put money aside for ongoing program rollout and are calling on the province to help us with the really foundational work. So like the flood mapping is very expensive. It's, you know, $500,000 to $700,000 if you're starting from scratch, doing all of the components to it. So if we do get this program, we're at the 90th percentile in completing the flood modeling. If we don't get the funding, then we basically put it down and start all over again, which is a bigger impact on staff. So.
If I may, so it's not a case of if we get the money now, we need more capacity to spend the grant. We're ready to do that.
We've already allocated the staff time. We just need the money to actually complete the consulting project itself. What we're also hoping through the completion of that flood mapping and flood modeling is the development of other mitigation scenarios, which is the business case around the really important component of removing gravel from the lower system. Which, if we don't remove gravel from the lower system, then all the money we've put into it is for naught. And so this is kind of a foundational piece going forward. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't believe I have anyone else on my speakers list. Just make sure I'll call Director Smith.
So I have a question. Function 530, it's right now, the amount that's being requisitioned is less than the amount. Okay, sorry. Less than the amount that can be requisitioned. If it was needed, there's still a gap in there of what's being requisitioned now and what possibly it could go up to. I see it can go up to 222,000, and yet it's being requisitioned at 153. So there is a gap in there that's still available.
Ms. Miller?
Thank you.
So the value of that function, we're following board direction in terms of maintaining the core and the increases to core. So we're staying within that level. That's why we don't requisition to the max. And we've been working with the finance group to look at operational reserves and capital reserves so that we're setting money aside every year. A portion of that money gets set aside for gravel management programs or big institutional mapping projects. We definitely want to take advantage of any funding so that we're not paying the whole hit ourselves. So we can go to the max, but we'd like to have a business case to do that before we ask.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, the motion's been moved and seconded, I believe. Yes, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Moving on, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to bylaws. Item B1, CVRD Bylaw 4303, Couch and Bay Sewer System Management Amendment Bylaw 2020 for first, second, and third reading.
Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Salmon. Any discussion on those? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. CVRD Bylaw number 4303 for adoption.
Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Sebring. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. CVRD Bylaw 4304, Sentinel Ridge Sewer System Management Amendment Bylaw 2020 for first, second, and third reading.
Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Acton. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you. Bylaw 4304 for adoption.
Moved by Director Acton, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
CVRD Bylaw 4305, Eagle Heights Sewer System Management Amendment Bylaw 2020 for first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Staples. No discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Bylaw 4305 for adoption.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Kuhn. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Bylaw 4306, Satellite Park Water System Management Amendment Bylaw 2020 for first, second, and third reading.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Bylaw 4306 for adoption.
Moved by Director Smith, seconded by Director Staples. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Bylaw 4307, Douglas Hill Water System Management Amendment Bylaw 2020 for first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Morrison. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. I'm trying to figure out ways to shorten it. Ms. Legault.
Bylaw 4307 for adoption.
Moved by Director Smith, seconded by Director Kuhn. He's like the auctioneer, by the way, he just tosses a finger up. It's the secret auction bidder. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Bylaw 4308, Fern Ridge Water System Management Amendment Bylaw 2020 for first, second, and third readings.
Director Staples, seconded by Director Sebring. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed? Oh, none opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Bylaw 4308 for adoption.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Smith. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Bylaw 4309, Dogwood Ridge Water System Management Amendment Bylaw 2020 for first, second, and third reading.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Toporowski. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
And Bylaw 4309 for adoption.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Smith. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Bylaw 4310, Arbutus Ridge Water System Management Amendment Bylaw 2020 for first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director Wilson, because he hasn't moved one yet, seconded by Director McGonigal. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Bylaw 4310 for adoption.
Moved by Director Wilson again, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
CVRD Bylaw 4311, Cherry Point Water System Management Amendment Bylaw 2020 for first, second, and third reading.
Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Smith. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. We almost got everybody in here. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Ms. Legault.
Bylaw 4311, Cherry Point for adoption.
Moved by Director Justice, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Bylaw 4312, Shawnigan Lake North Water System Management Amendment Bylaw 2020 for first, second, and third readings.
Moved by, I was trying to get Director Acton in, but moved by Director Acton, seconded by Director Toporowski. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Unopposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Bylaw 4312 for adoption.
Moved by Director Sebring, seconded by Director Smith. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Bylaw 4314, Garbage and Recyclable Materials Collection Amendment Bylaw for second and third reading.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Staples. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms.
Bylaw 4314 for adoption.
Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Toporowski. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. I believe we struck the other bylaws from the agenda.
Correct?
So does that mean we're all the way down to question period?
That's right.
Question period. We are in just a few moments, yes.
Are you going to go into close before then?
I believe we are, yes. I'm sorry, but I think you do. Seeing nobody at the lectern for question period after that procedural question from the gallery, I'll call for a motion to go into closed session under the sections listed in the agenda, moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Toporowski. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed? We will wait for Mr. Yes, sir?